Okay, hello and welcome to another episode of CX Voices for CXM Magazine. I'm Katie. Today I am joined by the wonderful Anu Chandrasekar, and we are going to be talking all things banking today. So, welcome, Anu.
Thank you, Katie. It's such a pleasure to be here talking to you and on CX Voices podcast. And wow, yeah, how far we've come along
I
since we
know.
met on the forum, like maybe
Yeah,
two
gosh.
months
So
back. Yeah.
so we met probably it must have been about 2 or 3 months ago now, I think, on the Banking Leaders Forum recently, and have kind of clicked and started to get to know one another and are now sort of working together just to understand what's happening in the world of banking. But let's start there, shall we? Should we start maybe talking a little bit about the forum and then we'll get into kind of you and all the great work that you're doing in banking?
Thank you, Katie. It was like, obviously, we get a lot of invites. Banking forum, but that was something that sparked my attention because the forum had this very specific niche on banking and recent customer service, customer experience, how to. So I thought, like, okay, let me join. And wow, I thought the whole forum is just going to be like full of banking jargons, people talking about only AI, but what an open and refreshing conversation that was. I learned a lot, and I think that's what led to kind of me and you connecting further, Katie, because particular banking forum really reinstated the fact that how much other banks are learning from one another, adopting from one another, and there is so much to learn, and there is only a drop in the ocean that we know, and which yeah, that's where we started.
I
Yeah.
think that's the great thing, and sometimes that's the brilliant thing about these podcasts. It's sort of talking into particular sectors where people can come and learn from one another and understand, what's happening, especially in terms of customer experience, what's happening in these sectors. And I know for banking, there are such huge changes and it's definitely a world that embraces technology and certainly embraces the AI side of it, and we'll get into all of that because I know that that's a particular area that you are very passionate about. But Annie, let's start by taking a bit of a step back. Tell us about some of your own banking experience and what you do personally now. Tell us about some of the banks that you've done some work for.
Absolutely. Firstly, let me start by once again thank you for having me here. So I've spent around the last 2 decades in banking transformation, Katie. I've had the opportunity to work across domains, whether it is core banking, retail, commercial, corporate, and also have been really fortunate enough to work with many major banks across the globe, like NatWest. I started my career with ABN AMRO, still my very close to my heart. Erstwhile ABN AMRO, now it is RBS, and had a chance to work with NatWest, Lloyds, Bank of America in Singapore, and very recently a private boutique bank who is now venturing into their Greenfield Corporate Banking initiative. So yeah, one thing that I have always enjoyed, the domains have always changed, the technologies have always changed, but I've realized what I've enjoyed most in my last 20 years of transformation experiences. I love connecting the dots between strategy, technology, operations, and the change, and I look at the problem and what is the outcome that we are looking for, and using technology as a tool. AI is another technology as a tool, and that is what I enjoy. I do not I wouldn't call myself somebody who enjoys technology transformation for the sake of technology transformation. It is always going to be people related transformation where we use technology as a tool, which naturally has evolved into AI. I really naturally got very curious into AI because wow, it has taken over the world at the storm. And of course, it has like a lot of impact in banking as well. We could use agentic AI, generative AI capabilities in the banking field as well. So naturally, that made me look at it with more curious eye rather than I have ever had so much interest in a particular technology. I always look at the business problems and the outcomes and have technology with a little bit of a less focus. But AI, it's too broad, and I don't look at it only as just as a technology because it has a lot of potential to be the trusted partner for the human in the loop.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it really comes across. I know for yourself, it's, AI and the technology is something that you've spent a lot of time getting to understand. But I love the fact that actually for you, having worked across, as you say, NatWest, Lloyds, Bank of America, Investec, it's getting to the point where how does the technology serve the customer experience and the colleagues, the employees? What can we do to make things better ultimately? And
Absolutely.
I'm sure you've got some incredible kind of stories and experience across those banks that have got you to where you are now in terms of your interest in AI.
Absolutely, absolutely, Katie. And I love how you touched upon colleague experience, employee experience. Yes, it is always like as banks, because we are some sort of service providers, like we are providing a product, banking product or banking service. And yes, our end is always to give better customer experience, but how important it is to have better employee experience so that it could translate into customer experience. I always have this thing in mind that if we are gonna focus on providing better customer experience, let's treat our own employees as the first customer. They are our customers too. If we are giving treating them their technology and the way they deal with siloed systems and making the employee experience in a better focused outcome, it will naturally translate to better customer experience.
Yeah, I love that, and I know one of the topics that we kind of that we got into on the banking forum when we were all together was that I know you kind of had a particular interest in was around the how can you use the technology to enhance that employee experience, and one of the things that Michelle Booth from Zoom that she was speaking about was effectively the sentiment analysis and understanding the emotion and just really putting the focus onto the emotions that the employees and the colleagues who are, say, in contact centres are having to deal with when they're working through customer queries and kind of talking through everything that banks have to deal with from grief and vulnerability and so many different topics, and therefore how if you start with the employee experience in the contact centre that can make such a difference.
Totally, Katie. And oh my God, like I always say, I could listen to Michelle talking all day long. There is a way with which she presents. I love the way she talks. And one thing that stood out, Katie, I would like to reiterate that when Michelle said people who are calling customer service or they are already reaching the contact center, they would, with generative AI being so readily available, they already have tried to find a solution themselves. They already come prepared, armed with better knowledge. It is not that, oh my God, my app is not working, let me call my banking contact center. We have moved on. We have to respect the fact that the customers who are calling, they have better idea. Gone are those days where a customer mostly, like almost a majority of the part, they might not know the difference between what is happening in the payment background in different payment investigation stages. If a payment they, is getting stuck in multiple stages, they are already armed with the knowledge. So how can we make the employee, that is our customer contact service agent, unless we arm our employee experience or our customer service executive with better systems, better knowledge, how can they even stand a chance to give a better service, right? Because we are not dealing with plain vanilla customers. We have never dealt with. Customers are getting more and more knowledgeable. So if we are giving unstructured data, or I'll give you a very practical example, Katie, like something that I will even explain to my grandma. Okay, if my toddler is going to come and ask me, Mom, what are you talking about? If I contact center, if my toddler is asking about, let me explain in that way. This is how I'll explain it to him. I ask him to go and fetch a piece of fruit from the kitchen. If I have kept the like 4 or 5 baskets of fruits, before he could choose one piece of fruit that he likes. That the problem lies that I have kept it in siloed in multiple baskets before he could make a decision. Obviously, my toddler is going to go run, pick whatever is the first that he could see. He is going to fetch it and come, and then I'm going to get frustrated. Oh, I wanted you to eat that fruit. Do you not? Yesterday also you ate an apple. Why can't you eat? So the whole problem is that we are making the first base element translating it to banking. If a customer, let us assume that I'm the customer of KT Bank and I want to change my address, a simple customer address. I go into my credit card application or my credit card application. At the time of my credit card application, I have given my new address and I have said online, done, very good experience, great. And then I call for something else, something to talk related to mortgage, and the credit card application customer address change because our basic banking application systems are siloed. The customer address change that I have done in the credit card system or a core banking system has not yet reflected in the mortgage application system. And the customer is calling, and the customer service agent is looking at it, and they are referring to, oh, are you living in, say, so and so in Woodside Park? And I as a customer, I'm gonna get frustrated because it's almost 10 hours since I updated my address, and it's with the same bank's credit card I applied. And how come you're still saying? And it is going to instantly make me going to shake the trust. I'm not saying it will make me lose the trust, but it's going to shake the trust. I naturally start thinking it is a simple address change. If it is not reflecting after 10 hours, this is such a large bank, AT Bank, and if I'm still, this customer service agent is still referring to the old address, like it's almost at, I updated in the morning and I'm speaking at the evening, 6 o'clock in the evening. So that is why it is really important that we give better employee experience. If we are going to give, if a customer service agent, he has to look at multiple screens. I'm calling with a problem. Oh my God, my mortgage application, I'm not able to understand this field. Can you help me with this? And if a customer service agent already is dealing with my wavering, irritable emotions, I'm giving an example. I never talk to any customer service agent with irritability. I try to calm myself down. But and that if he is like, okay, he has to frantically look at a payment screen and he has to frantically look at, oh, they have updated in credit card, okay, I have to understand that maybe the end of day has not happened and that is why the mortgage has, if we are making it so difficult for them, obviously the employees, they are humans after all, right? The employee experience, the customer service agent is also going to translate it with unsaid words of nervousness. Oh, we are sorry. Oh, sorry, this hasn't updated here, and that I apologize for the confusion. All of this, we are actually dragging a simple problem which could have resolved at the first place,
Yeah,
right?
I
And
think you're right.
absolutely, which is why while we are talking about agentic AI strategy, or before talking about what we are productivizing or what we are industrializing, because a, a wrong unstructured data, if you are going to expose it to AI, it will industrialize, it will really speeden up the mistake, right? It is going to give the wrong information at a much faster pace. How is that productivity? We can't call that as a productivity. The better employee experience translated into customer experience, having measurable outcomes for that is productivity, which is why I was very, very happy. And, it sounded very promising when Michelle said that the recent Zoom AI capabilities, it even picks up the unread emotions, which is really important when a customer service agent is dealing with multiple things. On when he is looking at the screen, maybe he would not have looked at the customer, or he wouldn't have heard or captured the customer who's talking is like they are rolling the eyes, or they are getting frustrated, they are like kind of shaking their heads. These are unsaid things. They won't be translated into words. They won't actually say, I am getting annoyed or I am getting frustrated with this experience. How do we capture those unsaid emotions? How do we translate it in all that, whether it is the team's notes or like whether what granola notes, how do we capture in an employee experience or a customer experience? It is super important to measure how a customer feels, which is why when Zoom AI said that it is also going to capture the unsaid emotions and it is going to translate it into a way where the next customer service agent would understand, oh, they were not feeling great about the last conversation. I have to give better experience. I have to kind of tone down this conversation. These are finally, it is all the human intelligence, but it is about how, along with AI technology, how are we enabling these humans who are on the front line, being the face of our banks? How do we enable them with technology? Let it be any
So true.
technology. We are not fussed about the technology, but how are we enabling it? How are we making it seamless? How are we making it easier for this human to be his or her best or their
And
best?
those, I think, as you say, those colleagues and employees have got so much to think about and to deal with in those moments. I think a lot of people now say that, generally speaking, when a customer gets through to somebody to an agent, often it's a much more complex task that they need that agent to deal with, because maybe the basic tasks are now being dealt with at a level where you don't need to speak to anybody anymore. So one, they're dealing with a more complex task, and so they're trying to do all of the practical things that requires, at the same time as potentially dealing with quite an emotive subject. As you say, maybe somebody's upset, or they've had a negative experience. And I love the fact that AI can then actually kind of talk them through how to deal with the emotion,
Yes.
as well as, they know how to do their basic task, but they're now being helped from a therapeutic side of things, as to
Yes.
how do you actually help this person with the emotive side of what they're going through.
Yeah, because that human or therapeutic or empathetic is the edge that we have, Katie. Knowledge is so easy, it is so simpler. Let us acknowledge the fact that AI has made knowledge distribution really faster, and it's made easily available for everyone, right? So if somebody is calling the contact center, we have to enable the employee first to have that extra edge, that yes, I understand more from not just the knowledge or technology side, but from a human side.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting because agents can't be expected to be, cognitive therapists ultimately, can
No.
they? But it's sometimes necessary. I know one of the things Michelle was talking about was how, often you're calling your bank at the most vital times of life, that you don't realize that your bank will often come in, when say a relative has died and you have to call up and you're grieving, and there are lots of things that you're dealing with,
Yes.
and the amount of pressure on the agents to deal with that and to do it in a way that yeah, it must be so difficult. So hopefully the AI side of things, as you say, it's just there to support the human and to help them deal with people better.
Absolutely. Another use case would be when somebody has lost their money due to fraudulent activity, and a customer service agent is dealing with emotions there, plus also verifying if the money has already left the bank, it has gone into an irreversible, it has already reached an irreversible stage, or so. Unless you have that human emotional intelligence plus armed with technological information where the payment is exactly stuck at this point, if the customer service agent is opening and he has no clue where the payment is stuck, how are they going to talk to the customer who is already super anxious and panicky, and having potentially lost their money?
Mm. And I love your kind of references to the silos, and kind of relating it back to the sort of the bowl of fruit. But I suppose when customers that are calling in have such free and easy access to AI, ultimately, the consumers that are using it, I think we now have an expectation that the organisations and the banks that we're now speaking to should be able to access and deal with that technology in the same way that we can. And so I think we do find it shocking when we know the technology is available. There's no excuse now. We know that it's freely and readily available and has been really for a long time. And so it can be quite shocking when you find that somebody that you're speaking to in a bank doesn't have the information that they should do in reality because the technology's there. But as you say, because of the large corporate size of these organisations, there are so many silos. So yes, they're using this technology, but as you say, there are silos, and therefore the AI in this silo isn't speaking to the AI here, and so there just isn't this thread that's feeding along. And I know that that's something that you're trying to kind of tackle in your role as a transformation
Absolutely,
consultant.
absolutely. When we say transformation, never, there is no such AI strategy we would ever start with. We should ever start with, should we go with Claude or Copilot or ChatGPT Enterprise? That could never be the strategy. If I look at whole of AI enterprise, like AI architecture, I would call it I would put it into multiple stacks, and the bottommost stack, which is the important, without which nothing can be built, nothing is going to stay strong. The bottommost stack is always the data. How are the data stored? The data could be customer addresses being stored in a structured or unstructured way. There could be employee related details. There could be policy related. There could be your governance documents and important information. How are the data stored? Unless you have this foundation strong, if the whole foundation is into multiple silos with unstructured data, anything that you build on top of it is not going to stick. So the next layer is what you would call as generative predictive technology, something like maybe even something that could talk to these data and say, for example, ChatGPT Enterprise. So here it is almost like the internal AI layer, which is only talking to the data that is already there, available in your bank. So that is your next layer. And the next layer will be more like an enterprise layer, which is getting more into, like, let us say, for example, Copilot that is fetching information from the already available Microsoft Office. It could be Outlook, it could be Teams. I'm just picking random examples here. So that is the enterprise layer. So like I say, the data layer is not clear, Katie, that whatever the predictive technology is going to pick from this layer is going to be wrong, and whatever this predictive output is getting picked up on from the enterprise layer is going to be even more wrong. And if we build agentic AI capabilities where we are helping all these silos talk to each other, say for example, one customer address, like going back to the same example, the customer address should reflect from here to here, and it should happen faster. If we are building an agent on top of it, if the whole siloed thing is not first corrected, we are fixing the wrong problem. And we'll be patting our back saying that, oh yeah, we are kind of, instead of 10 hours, now we are updating it in 1 hour. I would ask, why are you updating it in 4 different places first? Let's just fix the bottom layer before patting our backs from 10 hour to 1 hour. The problem shouldn't be there. So there is no laurels on fixing a problem that shouldn't have been there in the first place. And then the last stack, which is my favorite, is the business outcome. You have amazing data, you have amazing predictive AI capabilities, and you built enterprise AI over it, and you built amazing agents. But obviously, there is nothing, it hasn't translated into either business measurable outcome. Sorry, we could have done everything with existing technology or automation. So let's not AI for the sake of it. Let's not do it just because everybody else is doing it. Maybe we do not need it yet, or maybe we truly need it yet. But there is a layer by layer approach that needs to be taken, which is how, whenever, not just AI transformation, any transformation that I look at is always, it starts from the data layer for me. I'm like super precious about how, where are you getting the data from? How are you storing it? How are you auditing it? Let us start from there and then build the layers from there. It shouldn't start with, if anybody would come, even for example, if somebody is saying, we are moving core banking technology from Mambu to Temenos. and you are going to be the transformation lead for that. I'll be like, great, thank you, but why are we moving from Mambu to Temenos? What exactly is the underlying business outcome? It's the same for AI. Sorry, did I talk too much on that?
No, no, that's brilliant. And I think where I'm intrigued, and probably is where a lot of banks are currently sitting, is where they have grown over, over the last sort of 3 years. And as you say, there are currently silos across these banks. And I know this from the forums that we've held, where large banks are feeling the impact of this on a daily basis. So I'm intrigued. Where do they go from there? When you're coming in and you're taking a step back and going, right, well, we've got silos, we've got different technologies. How do you take a step back to say, this is how we're going to deal with this? Is it the decision makers that you have to speak to, making sure that you've got the right people at the right level? Like, how do you take it back to a simple level of technology when there are so many across that bank that are systemic?
Absolutely. It will be, and you rightly touched upon, it is going to be much more difficult for larger banks compared to the newer players in the market or challenger banks, because the newer challenger banks, they started with agile technology. They started with the leaner model. Of course, it is going to be easier for them to adapt to the newer technology, but with larger banks, understandably, there is no questions asked. And at the end of the day, larger bank is finally responsible for the money movement, right? If it is HSBC or the actual sponsor bank who's talking to the payment, or who is the bank that is actually talking to the Bank of England in a UK context, those will have the higher pressure to get it right, because they are responsible not just for the payment transactions flowing through their own. They're not just responsible for their own customers. From Pay UK perspective, not just HSBC's customers or HSBC's payments are their payments. Even if, say for example, if HSBC is sponsoring another smaller bank who doesn't have their own clearing mechanism, they don't have the clearing agreement between Bank of England, their transactions also translated through HSBC. But with Pay UK perspective, they are all HSBC transactions. It is between HSBC and this smaller bank to deal with it later. So HSBC or bank of this larger size or these clearing banks, they have a higher pressure. There is so much more. They have a much larger stake whenever there is such important major transformation that is happening, which is why it is really important to look at it on what is the vision that we are trying to achieve. It should not start with technology. Let me improve my technology cannot be a vision. What is the vision that we are trying to achieve? Are we trying to maybe improve the payment speed? Are we trying to improve the investigation rate? Are we trying to improve the fraud, catching the fraud earlier? Are we trying to improve that rate? Let's have that vision right, and then map it back to where we are and where is the information flowing from the bottom. And let's have, that is how I would look at it, especially with larger banks. There is a very common misconception that, oh, they have done it for so long, they should be so used to transformation. This is exactly why it is very difficult for larger banks to get onto a bandwagon when there is a regulatory change, because there is so much at play and there are a lot of legacy systems uh, which we have to kind of plug together, which is why it is always important to have that orchestration layer. When I say orchestration layer, that it is like the top most integration layer, which talks to multiple applications or microservices that we would call. If the integration layer is made stronger, Katie, then it means that we don't have to make the changes in these large applications. Like every single time there is a regulatory change, we don't have to run to the core banking application or the anti-money laundering application to make that change. We should have a very robust integration layer where the changes could be made on the top layer, whether it is coding level or if it is adding multiple new channels or new technologies. Then we should have an API mechanism to do it in the integration layer. I'm a fan of having that integration orchestration layer robust. So that is something that I have worked with recently with multiple major banks, which I am not able to name, but let us say one high street bank and one UK based building society, where making the integration layer stronger really gave very good results for their larger vision.
Annie, it's absolutely fascinating to kind of hear you speak, and I know this is clearly an area that you're really passionate about. So thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to ask you one more question, which is if there was one thing that listeners who are kind of coming on from the CXM magazine, I know they have a lot of listeners who work for major banks. Would there be one last thing that you would like to get across in this podcast? It could be a summary, or yeah, just let's end with one piece of wisdom from Anu Chandrasekar.
Yeah, sure. I would say don't start with technology. Let's start with the problem. That would be my one liner. And don't automate fragmentation, eliminate it. We don't need to automate fragmentation. We just need to eliminate it. Then we have a cleaner slate to automate.
Yeah, I love that. And I know for those that are listening, I know you're kind of freely available on LinkedIn, and there are various places that people can find you. So thank you so much. I know you're also going to be joining us on our next banking forum, which will be lovely. We'll be joined by probably 10 or 15 banks who are just discussing all of these brilliant topics. So thank you so much, Anu. We think you're brilliant, and thank you for joining us today.
Looking forward for the banking forum, like literally can't wait. There's so much to talk, there's so much to learn from. And Katie, thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure. It literally didn't sound like, or feel like we are recording a podcast.
Thank you. We'll see you later.
See you later. Bye.